I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, it's almost like playing whack-a-mole if you've been watching my blog here for the last decade. You know, whenever dark clouds start to come out on the market, because real estate markets or the stock market go up and down like a roller coaster. You get 3, 4, 5, 8-year bull runs, and then eventually the steam runs out and you get into some a downturn in a market. Now, as far as Vancouver real estate goes, it's way too early, but it is kind of funny, you know, how some of these guys are coming out of the woodwork on TV and the radio and some of these YouTube blogs. Of course, these guys have no disclosure. That's the first thing that I've been pounding home here for quite a while now. Some of these so-called experts, or people that are putting themselves out there as experts and you see on the mainstream media, are far from it. And I beg people to please dig a little deeper on some of these people that are coming up with these doom and gloom scenarios here, that the market's going to crash, Vancouver real estate's going to drop 20%, foreclosures are going to double. In some cases, maybe these things might happen. That's beside the point, as I'm going to get to in a minute. But most of these people are on the outside looking in. They have an agenda. They have a narrative that they want to push for various reasons. But most of them that I can see and that I've gotten information from reliable sources, most of them are on the outside looking in. So when it comes to Vancouver real estate, they do not own any Vancouver real estate. They've been left behind, they're out of the market, and they want to push this angle that the market is going to crash, I guess in hopes that they can maybe buy in. Or, you know, they own very little real estate, maybe a 1-bedroom or a studio, and of course they're looking to move up market and need the market to cooperate, need the market to come down 20 or 30% so they can buy in or move up the ladder. So they perpetuate, cherry pick this negative data to fit their agenda. And I want people to be very careful of these people. Please look a little deeper. You know, people that come onto the media in any way should have some disclosure. Just like when you get a guy on CNBC or on Bloomberg giving you his picks, his market picks, his stock picks. They have to disclose there whether they own that stock or not, either personally, family members, or the firm they work with. It's disclosure. And boy, I would love to see some of these doom and gloomers. Give us your background. Give us your story. How many years have you been in real estate? How much real estate do you own, if any? You know, what is your situation? Now, I've always put it out there, complete transparency with myself. And if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to go on here with it. I've talked about it many times. Buy my book. I've owned real estate for over 33 years in Vancouver. I own a large investment portfolio. I've always owned my principal residence. I'm a big believer in just buying and holding real estate. I also own a large stock portfolio. And I use the only advantage that individual investors have, and that is buy good quality companies, strong balance sheets, wide competitive moats, strong cash flows, dividends, and a history of paying a dividend. Buy them and just hang on to them. That's the advantage that individual investors have, both in the stock market and in real estate. You know, real estate is not a tradable commodity. It's not. It's extremely expensive to buy and sell. A stock I can liquidate for pennies. Real estate's going to cost you $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 to sell it, plus the taxes, and then the taxes going back in. But ask yourself who these people are. Ask for some transparency. They should be disclosing if they're in the market or they're out of the market. That'll tell you everything you need to know. But it's like playing whack-a-mole, as I say. You know, when the dark clouds form, here we are, you know, some of these guys, they crawl out of the woodwork. You know, the market hasn't, they've been calling for a market correction in Vancouver, a crash for 25 years, some of these guys. It just hasn't panned out for them. You know, supply and demand and the desirability to live in Vancouver long term, there's always going to be short-term corrections. But over the long term, it's going to continue to be a rocket ride. But here they are using a pandemic. 100,000 people have died. This is their chance. You know, the market hasn't participated in my doom and gloom predictions, but maybe now this pandemic might just do it for me. It's kind of sick in a way. But I'm going to have to play whack-a-mole here, which I've been doing for many years, on kind of picking apart some of these things I'm seeing on YouTube and on the radio and in some of the media outlets like CBC and Vancouver Sun. Because most of them you should be ignoring. If you're in the market, you own your principal residence, you've owned it for a long time, enjoy the house, these predictions should mean very little to you. What the market does 3 months from now or 6 months or a year shouldn't matter. Housing and having a roof over your head is a 30, 40, 50-year need. If you're an investor, you're buying the property like the investors I represent, you're putting a tenant in it and keeping it for 20 or 25 years. What the market does short term is a little concern. Always remember that. Saw give you a prime example here. Saw a YouTube blog here, and the title was that Canadian foreclosures could double in the next year. And I had to laugh at this one. Now, first off, I will give you the straight goods on this, and I'm going to debunk that. First off, foreclosures in Canada are about as rare as hen's teeth. As a matter of fact, as we speak, and I tweeted this 3 or 4 months ago, I think they publish a stat that when it's either 60 or 90 days delinquent on your mortgage, that will go onto an announcement roll there. I think currently it sits at about 1/3 of 1%. So in other words, if foreclosures or the ones that went on this delinquent roll doubled, we're still talking less than 1%. Keep in mind too that even when people are 30, 40, 60, 80 days delinquent, very few of those ever actually get sold in foreclosure court, as I'm going to tell you in a minute. Because I've done a few blogs on this over the years, probably 3 or 4 on how foreclosures work. Go back into my earlier blogs if you want to get really the real fundamentals or the real logistics of how a foreclosure, or what we call a court-ordered sale in Canada, works. Now, I'm speaking from experience on this because I have sold many court-ordered sales over the years through several of the major banks. They hired me to sell the properties. Now, I have not sold a court-ordered sale in over 5 years. I think the last one that I was offered was about 4 years ago, and I referred it to another realtor. It's just not my cup of tea these days. I'm dealing with a lot more higher-end properties now, but I also still love listing and selling one-bedrooms and studios in downtown Vancouver. But the foreclosure business just isn't really the market that I'm into, and really not all that interested in that business. But it's incredibly rare right now. So keep in mind here, Canadian lenders are totally different than US lenders during the subprime and how a home gets sold as a foreclosure or court-ordered sale here. For the main reason being that Canadian lenders, as I've said for many years now, are not cavalier lenders. You have to be very well qualified to get a mortgage through a Canadian bank now. And even if you go through some of these third-tier lenders, these loan shark guys, even then you're generally putting 10, 15, 20% down. Most people are buying homes these days in Vancouver, east side, west side, downtown, using conventional mortgage. The vast majority of people are buying with 20% down. But here's the thing with foreclosures in Canada I'm going to tell you. Canadian banks are extremely patient with people who run behind on their mortgage payments. So after about 60 days, they will send you a letter saying, hey, listen, what's going on here? You're 2 months past on your mortgage payment. What they will do is they will give that homeowner every opportunity. If they are in financial problems, they've lost their job, or it's a disability, sometimes it's a divorce, whatever. The banks are more than understanding, in my opinion. They will give you plenty of time before they actually come out, serve you with a summons to vacate the property and bring a locksmith out and kick you out of your home and change the locks. That can take 4, 5, 6 months, which is generally plenty of time for that seller to list that property on the MLS, give me a call, and get it sold at full market price. Keep that in mind. I have sold many properties over the years from people that have called me up and said, Owen, I've lost my job, I'm disabled, I'm going through a messy divorce, whatever it is. There's a million reasons. I'm a month behind on my mortgage payments and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make next month's payment. I want to sell the house. No problem. We list it, we market it, usually within 30, 40 days, depending on how aggressive we need to get it and how quickly we need to get it sold. We sell the property, he gets the money, discharges the mortgage and pays off the mortgage. Here is where most properties go into what's known as court-ordered sale, which is very, very rare in Canada because I've sold them. Every single home that I have sold, I can tell you, is a result of special levies on the strata, or in most cases they are condos. In the vast majority of the ones that I sold, they were all condos. They were a result of a special levy. So in other words, they've got to do a rain screen. It's been approved by strata. It's $65,000 per owner. The first payment is due in 2 months or 3 months in 3 installments or whatever. In that case, it makes it extremely difficult for me to step in now and sell that property for a number of reasons. A, the buyer looks at it and says, hey, there's a $65,000 levy owing on this at the end of the summer. The other thing, of course, is with buyers, the banks won't lend on these type of properties that have got extensive levies coming up. If they do, you generally need 50% down. So it greatly reduces the purchase pool there. So in the vast majority of cases, they're not caused because of financial hardship, court-ordered sales. Those do trigger a sale. But generally, I will step in, sell the home, they'll pay off the mortgage. No problem. The banks will give us plenty of time. They don't want to go to court on these homes. Trust me. They will give you plenty of time to sell it in the natural way by putting it on the MLS. The vast majority of the homes, as I say, they're usually condos, and they're usually a result of a special levy, major special levy, which renders the unit essentially unsellable for most people, or a buyer that can put at least 50% down and then take possession and pay the levy down the road. But watch my older blog. I'll show you about the process of how court-ordered sales go. Even sales that go into court order, and I've been through many of them over the years. Again, I haven't done one for 5 years. But I could tell you stories about how it goes is you market the property. We cannot advertise it as a court-ordered sale, by the way, to the public. To the realtors, we can disclose that. There is no public announcement that this is a court-ordered sale. That's the big difference between Canada and the United States. Once we get an offer on a property, with you can write it with subjects. Once the subjects are removed, I can now set a court date. We set a court date for it to get approved by a judge, and I'm able now to disclose what the price is going into court, what the accepted offer was, which is totally different than a normal sale, of course. And then my job is to invite other people to come into court to get into a bidding war. And I could tell so many stories about some of the wacky stuff that I used to see in court. This is in my early days, folks. This is like 10, 11, 12 years ago, where I was synced in with a couple of the big lenders, and I was selling a few of these every year. And you would get into these bidding wars, sealed envelopes. You could put an order in court in a sealed envelope. The judge would open it. I had one case where there was 9 or 10 offers in court. They had 3 offers that were the same, and the judge went back and had them revise the offer, not once, but twice. By the time this thing sold, it was oversold. I got close to a record price for this thing, and it wasn't even a good unit. But that's what getting into bidding wars in court and the type of crazy things people can do. So court-ordered sales in Vancouver are as rare as hen's teeth. Again, even if court-ordered sales double in the next year because of this COVID-19, it is still not going to move the needle. It is not going to make really much of a difference at all. Most of them seldom go actually to court and get sold as a court-ordered sale. They usually sell them on the MLS way before it gets to that point. And then the ones that do end up going to court, as I say, generally there's something seriously wrong with it. It's not just because the guy lost his job for COVID. We can sell that in the open market, and the banks will give us 60, 90 days all day. They don't want to take it to court. The ones that do go to court for a lot of the times are issues with the strata, major levies coming down the road, or it's just a dog unit. It's an old unit. It's got issues, maybe it's got huge insurance premiums on it, I don't know, but that's how most of them go. Final thing I'll just leave you with here too, a warning here. Read in the Financial Post here, they had a couple of stories of some sellers in Toronto who had to sell because they had lost their job. They were out of work, and put the home on the market, and they sold the home. Which is what happens, Again, these people had deferred their mortgages for a month or two. No problem. The banks will work with you. We're not going to foreclose on you. Put it on the market. Hire a realtor and sell it at full market price, which both these people did. However, they were faced with huge, huge penalties for getting out of their mortgage. And I've done a couple of blogs on this over the years. When you still have time left on your mortgage, what most people are doing when they sell a home is they're moving up or downsizing. So you can usually port that mortgage, transport it to the new home without any penalty usually, or a very small transfer fee. In these cases, these people were having to sell for financial reasons and weren't buying back in. So they weren't looking to port the mortgage. The other bad thing for these people was they both had 5-year terms, mortgages, that still had 3 or 4 years left on it. One of them was at 3.7, the other one was at 3.9%. Today's rates, of course, are much lower. They're running more like about 2.2. So how the banks work is they will either hit you with a 3-month, when you're selling a home that still has 2 or 3 years left on the mortgage, they will either charge you a 3-month interest penalty, or they will charge you the interest rate differential. Generally, it's the one that's the highest, because hey, these banks are in it to make money, and this is why I own all the Canadian banks. They're a license to print money. So what they're doing with these two people in Ontario, and what they'll be doing with anyone here that's selling a house and isn't porting the mortgage, they will be looking at that interest rate differential. So these people both had 3 and 3.5 years left on the mortgage. They had $800,000 left. They went from a 3.8 down to 2.2. Make a long story short, one guy was looking at $33,000 penalty, has to be paid up front in one shot. The other guy was looking at like $22,000. Super, super steep penalties, $33,000. So keep that in mind. When I'm listing a home and I'm talking to my sellers, most of them, again, are staying in the market. They're moving up or they're moving down and reporting. Or a lot of them are on variable rate mortgages, no issue. Or it might be someone that had a 5-year term and has 6 months left on it, no problem. But these ones that have got 2 years or 3 years and you're going from 3.8 to 2.2, that interest rate differential is going to kill you. So be very careful with that. And it's just another reason why I tell people that real estate is not a tradable commodity, for God's sakes. You got all the taxes going in, the PTT, maybe the GST, the conveyancing costs. When you sell it, I'm not cheap. I'm going to sell it, I'm going to get you maximum price, but I'm going to charge you a fair bit of commission to sell the home. You're going to have more conveyancing costs. And then you may have, like these guys in Ontario, $20,000 or $30,000 mortgage penalties. This is why real estate, you buy it and you hold it. That's all you do with real estate, and tune out these guys that are talking about foreclosures doubling in the next year because of a pandemic, for God's sake. Not going to move the needle, folks. It's not. One guy out here, he was on the radio the other day going around everyone saying that you should sell now because at this time next year, homes are going to be worth 20% less. So that's a great idea. I've done lots of blogs on this one. Sell your principal residence, get cute, try and time the market, pay the real estate commissions, rent for 2 years, in hopes maybe that this guy is right. It's like throwing tossing a coin, that maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. It still won't work out for you. You got to tune this stuff out. Look for disclosure with these people. Look for transparency. Who are these so-called experts? And you see, the media loves these guys because they get the same gaggle of these guys. These media lackeys is what I would call them. They're available at the drop of a hat to go on TV or go on the radio. They got lots of time on their hands, these guys. They're not in my league, that's for sure. I'm busy. And I've told you guys many times before, I dropped all those media outlets years ago for the simple reason that it was the same old story. They didn't want to hear, I'm way too positive and way too optimistic and way too successful for these media outlets like CBC. They always wanted to get in touch with me with something negative, the foreign buyer's tax, the shadow flipping. What do you think the market's going to go? I would tell them, well, who cares what the market does in the short term? Long term, you buy a home today, You buy a Kitsilano detached home today, and in 25 years, you're going to be sitting on several $1 million of capital gain. They would just go quiet at the other end. They didn't want to hear it. So for that reason, I stopped. But hey, there's lots of guys out there on the outside looking in, don't own a lot of real estate, don't have a lot of success, that are more than happy to feed them that narrative, that doom and gloom narrative, whatever they want. They'll tell them what they want to hear. And that's why they keep going back to these same people over and over. But they have no transparency, no track record. You got to tune these people out. They're causing you a lot of damage if you're listening to these people. Because I had a few people ask me and emailed me saying, I watched your blog. And one guy told me he'd been watching my blog for years and wanted to know what I thought about this guy who was, predicting that, market's going to crash 20% here and to sell now while the getting's good. I didn't even get back to him because obviously he couldn't have been paying very close attention to my blogs for the last 2 years. I've been playing whack-a-mole with these guys for 10 years now on my blog. You know how, if you've been watching my blog and paying attention, you know exactly what I think of these people. Tune them out. Focus on the long term. That's all you want to do with real estate, or for that matter, saving for retirement. It's not a trader's game. You're at a big disadvantage trying to trade. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to all my new subscribers over the last 3 or 4 months. I've had, I think, about 600 or 700 new subscribers to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Hope you enjoy my blogs. See you next week.